Hey guys, Insomnia here with some more AFK Arena. Today we're going to be looking at something that a lot of people have been requesting, and that is sort of a tier list. I was really seeing how I could break this up, if I was going to do it by faction, if I was going to do it by class. And I'm actually going to start it with the tanking class. So we're actually going to go through all four factions and go through kind of the top tier tanks that you should be using in each faction and exactly why they are the top tier tanks of that faction. Because I do run all four faction accounts, I have kind of had a little bit more exposure to a couple of the other tanks. So let's go ahead and get into the video. So as we look at the tanks, there are a lot of different classes that can tank. Both the Hyperions and the Celestials I'm not going to worry about. As long as I've been playing this game, I just got one to Mythic. So they're really, the feasibility to get them high enough to tank, especially towards endgame, is not really there. So the first tank I want to look at is Lucius. Lucius by far is the strongest tank in the game. His ability and his skill set with his signature item, if you look at his ability, Heaven's Protection, shields, a value of shield is increased by 550%. He shields everything that is on the board. So he shields all the minions, he shields Grizzle's minions, he shields Baden's minions. Anything that is on the board he will shield, which is huge. And it does a heal over time when the enemy, or when the heroes are shielded. Couple that with his Divine Blessing ability, which actually does a heal on a hero. So not only does he shield the hero, he heals the hero. He takes energy away from the other team, which is with his signature item. Lucius smashes the ground with a Warhammer that causes a shockwave, knocking him down while dealing AoE damage, which is good. Final Blessed Shield, which reduces the damage he is taking. So overall, his skill set with his shield, his heal, the ability to take away energy, and the ability to mitigate a ton of his own damage while regenerating more energy just makes him, in my opinion, the best tank that you can get in the game. I don't know anyone who does not use him. So let's go ahead and look at his signature item. Skill is Divine Purge. Enemy heroes that have energy recovery effects reduced by 30% when struck by the Divine Strike ability. Level 10 reduces it by 60%. Level 20 reduces it by 90%. And his level 30 removes enemy buffs that they may have. So super solid when it comes to energy regeneration, especially when he's on a target that is very reliant on energy, which it may be Chimera, another tank. He can actually nerf the energy regen that they get. So super strong with the Divine Strike ability. The second hero for the Lightbearer faction is Hendrick. Hendrick, the only drawback that I see with him is he has two abilities that only can be used once, which unfortunately he does have Crippling Blow, which is his ultimate. It is an AoE stun that stuns longer, up to 4 seconds, depending on his hit points. So as he starts to lose hit points, his stun will actually last longer, up to 4 seconds. Shield Bash, which is a knockback and also stunning them. So both his ultimate and his Shield Bash have a not only damage, but have a knockback ability and have a stun ability, as well as reducing the enemy's damage by 40%. Sacrificial Shield, these are the two abilities, the last two. If one of Hendrick's backline teammates receives fatal damage, he jumps in the way. Can only be used once per battle. So if you're fighting a team where it's going past the 30-second mark, even the 45-second mark, once this ability is used, he will not use it again. So unfortunately, that's kind of the big drawback, as well as his last ability, which is Steadfast. When his health falls below 40%, he places the shield on the ground and assumes a defensive position. He starts to heal himself and takes less damage. But again, the Steadfast ability can only be used once per battle. So that seems to be the biggest drawback with Hendrick, is two of his major abilities that are probably one of the strongest, or two of the strongest abilities in the game, he can only use once. So let's go ahead and look at his signature item. His signature item has the Steadfast ability. At the beginning of battle, Hendrick's max health is increased by 300% of his attack rating. 10% or his 10 unlocks 600% attack rating. Plus 20, all of Hendrick's attacks now do an additional damage that equal to 2% of his health, so he's going to have super high health. And plus 30 at the beginning of the battle, his max health is increased by 1000% of his attacks rating, making him a super strong tank, because if you're increasing his health by 1000% of his attack rating, maximum health increase will not affect the proportion of his health that Hendrick already possesses. So he will be super, super strong when it comes to hit points. Only downfall is the 2 abilities he can only use once. So that will sum it up for the light bearers. So let's go ahead and get into the maulers. When you look at the maulers team, it has to be Brutus. Brutus is just such a vital, vital hero and can carry so many teams. His ultimate ability, his whirlwind ability, Brutus is immune to magical damage. 350% of total damage dealt is converted to health. His ultimate ability brings a ton of health, and he is one of the only heroes that is immune to magical damage when he's using his ultimate ability. His roar ability is very nice as well because of the level 3. Physical damage received by enemies is increased by 40%, and attacks cannot be dodged. So this is a good way to counter Kaz or really, really high dodge heroes, is with his roar ability. Brutal Defiance, Brutus damage output is raised according to how low his health falls. He does have the life leech ability as well. So as his health goes down, or as he's doing more and more damage, as you see level 3, attack rating increased by 100% and haste. So as he's doing more damage, he is bringing back life, which brings me to his strongest ability is Last Gasp. When Brutus is dealt a fatal blow, he has the ability to retain 1 health point and is immune to all subsequent damage for 8 seconds at level 3. So this gives him the ability, essentially this is a hero that you have to kill twice. Once you get him down to the 1 hit point, he actually gets an immunity shield. Usually does his whirlwind at that point because he's been taking a lot of damage. Usually heals right up to full health, so you do have to go ahead and kill him again, making him a super solid tank even for endgame. And they just did a rework with his signature item, which I'll go ahead and show you now. This is his rework signature item. Upsurge restores 15% of his health after the Last Gasp ability is used. So once he goes immune, he'll have 15%. Level 10 gives him 30% of his hit points back. And remember, it does have a heal factor because he does have the life leech ability. Plus 20, it is extended by 1 second. So that'll take it to 9 seconds of battle that he is going to be completely immune. Level 30, once the effects last out have ceased, Brutus receives an additional shield that is able to mitigate damage equal to 50% of his max health, which lasts for 5 seconds. So when you look at his abilities, he's not only going to be completely immune for 9 seconds, once that ends, you're going to have another 5 seconds of a shield, so 14 total seconds that he's going to be kind of immune. The other Mauler hero that got a huge kind of buff is Scrag. Scrag's abilities now with his signature item are super strong. A lot of people have started using him for tanks. If you fought him in the Voyage of Wonder where it was 4 Scrags, super difficult to kill. Beast of Burden ability, he rides Ironjaw, which uses 80 energy per second, which increases his damage quite a bit. He is immune to control abilities and it ups his attack rating. If you've used him, he actually pushes right through heroes and knocks down enemies, which is very nice. Also deals damage twice. So his ultimate ability is super solid now. Brutal Force, Ironjaw assists Scrag in attacking his enemies by smashing them into the air. Knocking them into air, it actually kind of does a knockback or a stun. And he does damage to them, and it hits multiple enemies when they hit the ground. Iron Skin, enemies deal less to Scrag the closer they get to him, so when he's tanking, damage reduction is increased by up to 60%. So when they're in striking range, similar to him being frontline tank, they are going to do less damage to him. And this is the coolest ability, is the Stampede ability. Every 8 seconds, an Ironjaw appears and charges towards the enemy. If you've seen it in combat, it's actually a little tiny copy of him, but it knocks them back and it stuns them, which is huge. So every 8 seconds, he is getting a stun. and it runs through all of the enemies that are in the path. So it doesn't just hit one, it can actually hit multiple enemies, which is a pretty cool ability. Now let's take a look at his signature item. His signature ability, which is the Beast Rider, the ability Beast of Burden, which is his ultimate ability, will no longer drain energy for the first 5 seconds when it's used. Level 10 only requires 500 energy to activate the ultimate ability for the first time. Plus 20, energy that is recovered when injured is increased by 50%, and his level 30 ability only requires 200 energy to activate the ultimate ability for the first time. So he'd actually come kind of right out the gate, takes a little bit of damage, 200 energy. He will use his ultimate ability, which runs over people, as well as his stun ability, which happens every, I believe it was 8 seconds. So super overpowered as a tank. A lot of people have started using him since this rework. So taking a look at the Wilders, we have Almas, which just received a rework. His ultimate ability, Deep Roots, he actually roots himself in the ground, immediately recovers 40% of max HP, and roots himself to the ground until the end of battle. When rooted, he's immune to control abilities, and his normal attack turns into ranged attack, raising his attack power. If he has enough energy while rooted, he will use 35% of his energy to strengthen his normal attacks and stun effect. So his ultimate ability, once he roots himself to the ground, he does a ton of damage, and he does a ton of damage really, really fast, increasing his attack rating by 50% when he uses his Deep Roots on level 3. Withering Roots uses roots to entangle nearby enemies, causing 120% damage, which the damage goes up, but entangled enemies cannot use any attacks. So similar to Arden, he has a root ability, which is very, very strong because that adds kind of a CC element to a tank, which is very strong. Forest Oath, he casts a shield around his weakest teammate, mitigating up to 200% of the damage they receive. And as you can see, the shield restores 4% of lost health, so it has a heal over time at level 2. Level 3, the value of the shield is increased to 220% of his attack rating. His final ability, which is Life Torrent, a passive ability that restores 4% of lost hit points per second. Level 2, the weakest ally also receives this ability. In level 3, 5% of lost hit points per second. So every second he is going to have a heal over time. Couple this with another hero such as a Lucius, where they're going to get a shield. Is not only is he going to get shielded and healed, he has his own heal, which is super strong. And with his reworked signature item, which we'll go ahead and take a look at, he is a super solid tank for the Wilder team. So the skill is Healing Roots. Almas's own health recovery effects are increased by 10%. His level 10, Almas's own health recovery are increased by 20%. Plus 20, after using the ability Deep Roots, Almas's health recovery effect is increased by an additional 10%. In the level 30, after using Deep Roots, Almas's health recovery is increased by an additional 20%. So he has the ability to keep himself up as a tank through his signature item, which is super solid. As we know, though, with patch 1.3, he did get a little bit of rework for his plus 30 ability. And if you look at the new skill, the plus 30 ability, after using Deep Roots, the effects of Forest Oath will be received by 3 allies. So if you remember his Forest Oath ability, which casts a shield on other heroes, so he is going to actually cast a shield on 3 other heroes, and they get the heal over time effect of that shield, which is super overpowered. The other tank that is super strong on the Wilder team is Cirrus. Cirrus, for a number of reasons. Big one is his ultimate ability. Sends waves towards the enemy, knocking them back and stunning them. So the entire enemy team will get knocked back, and they actually do get pushed almost to the entire back of the map, and they are stunned. But not only that, is he calls upon the ocean to summon a large column of water that erupts. And again, when it does this, it hits 3 enemies at level 3. But the enemies do fly up into the air, so they're not doing any attack. It's kind of a stun, kind of a CC. Third ability is the Ocean's Blessing. He uses the Ocean's Blessing to strengthen his weapon. After strengthening the weapon, the following normal 3 attacks are AoE effects, area of effect. And so he does a lot more. It's almost like a giant sweeping attack that he has when the Ocean's Blessing is up. And his final one is Free Flow, which this is what makes him such a solid tank. Damage that is less than 7% of his maximum health is reduced by 50%. Level 3 damage less than 10% of his health is reduced by 50%. So if you can really get him up high and get his hit points up high, anything that is less than 10% of his hit points is just going to do half damage, which will make him a very, very solid tank. Couple that again with the reworks that we've been seeing and taking a look at his signature item. His skill is the Sea Lord. At the beginning of battle, Cirrus will cause his own maximum health to increase by 40%. However, his current health after the increase will not be at maximum unless it's restored, which is super strong if you're running him with Namora because he does have to be healed up. Plus 10% at the beginning of battle, he will recover 2% of his maximum health per second for 40 seconds, which is a majority of the battle. Plus 20, the value of his maximum health is raised to 70%, is increased. The value of Cirrus' maximum health increase is raised to 70%, and level 30, the value of his max health increased by 100%. So you can actually double his health, which is super strong, running him with Namora. The final two tanks that we're going to look at are from the Graveborn faction. The first one is Thorin. He got a little bit of a rework a little while ago, and it increased his survivability by a ton. His ultimate ability, Retaliation, he focused for several moments before swinging a weapon, dealing 140% damage to them. 200% of the damage received by Thorin during this focusing stage will be dealt back to the enemy. And also level 3 recovers 40% of damage dealt to enemies as health. So once he does this retaliation effect, he actually just starts kind of powering up, absorbs a lot of the damage that he takes and then unleashes it back. If you've used him, usually with the retaliation effect, if there's heroes around him, he instantly kills the heroes. Or if you're fighting against him and you're doing a lot of damage, putting a lot of damage into him, the retaliation effect will kill you, which is pretty funny to see. Domination cleaves an enemy, dealing 120% damage, causing them to fall to the ground. And level 3, I do like 80% of arrow damage is converted into health, which again heals him, helps his survivability a little bit. Resurrection, this is the big ability that a lot of people focus on. Resurrects himself after dying with 60% health. Level 2, enemies are terrified for 3 seconds. And then level 3, 75% of maximum health is restored. So once he dies the first time, he actually resurrects himself. When he comes up the second time, he terrifies. So he actually does a terrifying, a little short stun on the enemies. And he gets 75% of his health back. So similar to Brutus, this is a hero that you do have to kill twice. Third ability, which is very, very strong at the beginning of battle, he curses the enemy with the lowest health for 15 seconds, causing them to suffer 70% of the total damage that is dealt to Thorin. So if you have him in the tanking position, a lot of times he puts this on one of the backline heroes, just enough to get them to almost nothing in the backline. Because level 2, the duration is extended to 25 seconds instead of 15. And then level 3, enemies receive up to 75% of the damage dealt to Thorin. So if he's taking a lot of damage, especially a lot of burst damage teams, he kills someone out from the backline just through this ability. And then his retaliation ability will kill someone who is standing in front of him as well. So let's take a look at his signature item. So the ability is the King's Will. Thorin cannot be killed during the initial focusing phase of the retaliation ability, which is his ultimate ability, so he actually can't die. The plus 10, Thorin's max health is increased by 15% while in battle. The plus 20 increases his max health by 30%. And the plus 30 unlock, Thorin cannot be killed in battle for the first 2 times that he enters the focusing phase of his retaliation ability. So not only does that give him the ability to resurrect if he is killed or when he is killed, he has a ton more hit points. And if he's using his ultimate, they're not going to be able to kill him the first 2 times that he uses it at plus 30, which makes him a super, super strong survivable tank. The final tank for the Graveborn team, I did have to go with Grizzle. The reason is in this game, distractions are really, really strong, meaning that if you have totems, if you have Grizzle's ads, if you have Baden's ads, the enemy will always go for those first. So his ability, reanimation, he raises a gravestone that behind the enemy, which does cause a stun when it is when the gravestone shows up. And 2 undead warriors will be summoned, which is his level 3 ability. Damage is increased up to 150%, summoning 2 skeletal warriors. So they actually have to kill both of those 2 little skeletal warriors that are summoned from Grizzle. Demonic Assault, he strikes an enemy in front of him, dealing 70% damage and stealing 30% of the defense rating. So he has the ability to buff his own defense, which is very, very nice. If you look at level 3, Grizzle now steals the same percentage of the enemy's attack rating. So he makes himself stronger attack rating, stronger defense rating from whatever the enemy has. So the stronger the enemy, the more he's going to pick up. Combine that with his Shadow Shield ability. He usually Shadow Shields himself, or I've seen him Shadow Shield Lucius a lot. He actually puts a armor increasing shield, and then when the shield blows up or when the shield is expired, it causes damage to nearby enemies, and it also reduces enemies' energy by up to 100 energy points. So saying similar to the Graveborn team, has the ability to nerf energy of the opposing team. Deadly Protection, he's one of the only heroes that have this. Deadly Protection reduces all magic damage reduced or received by friendly targets by 15%. Level 2, magic damage received by Graveborn is reduced by an additional 15%, so that's 30% magical reduction. Level 3, magical damage received by all allies is reduced by up to 20%. So couple that with a Graveborn, 35% magical reduction, which is super strong. There's not many heroes that have magic damage reduction or magic avoidance, so that makes him super strong. So let's take a look at his signature item, which just puts him over the top. The signature item has the reanimation ability. Summons 1 skeletal warrior every 9 seconds behind the enemy closest to the edge of the battlefield when Grizzle is alive. So every 9 seconds, you're getting another skeletal warrior. When he uses his ultimate, you're getting 2 more. So continuously through the entire battle, you're getting them. Plus 10, Grizzle recovers 10% of his health when the skeletal warrior dies. So not only are you getting a lot of skeletal warriors throughout the battle, every time one of them dies, they get 10% of his health back. Plus 20% of his maximum health is restored after a resurrection. Plus 30%, skeletal warrior is summoned every 7.5 seconds. You're getting another skeletal warrior, which is super overpowered. So that will sum it up for the tier list. 4 different factions, 8 different tanks, 2 tanks from each faction. Super solid tanks, especially when you're getting their signature item up plus 20 or higher, just because of the abilities that they carry. If you're running the faction teams, these are the tanks that I would choose. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of my choices. Is there anyone that I kind of forgot or left out, or what your best choices for tanking would be? And I'll be coming out with the rest of the faction list pretty soon. And as always, thank you guys for watching.